In this video, we're going to introduce you to the SQL select statement. The select statement is the tool that you'll use to retrieve data from a database. The select statement is a very powerful statement. It has lots of different options, and there's lots of different ways to use the select statement. We talk about a lot of those different ways in the textbook. In this video, we're simply going to introduce you to the select statement. Now, in its simplest form, the select statement can be used to retrieve certain specified columns for every row from a table. And this is the general format of how you use the select statement to do that. You start with the word select, then you have one or more column names, followed by the word from, and then you have the name of a table. And the select statement will simply return every row from the table, and it will give you the columns that you've specified here in the select statement. For example, suppose we want to see the name column for every row in the contacts table. We would say select name from contacts. So this statement will give us all of the rows from the contacts table, but it will only give us the name column from those rows. Here's another example where we want to get the name column and the email column. Select name, comma, email from contacts. So that gives us the name column and the email column for every row in the contacts table. Here's one more example. This will give us the contact ID column, the name column, and the email column for every row from the contacts table. Select contact ID, comma, name, comma, email from contacts. Of course, if we want to get every column from all of the rows in a table, a simpler way to do it is to simply use the asterisk wildcard character. We can say select star from contacts, and that will give us all of the columns from each row in the contacts table. Okay, so those are some examples of the select statement. Of course, the way that we use the select statement is with the cursor objects execute method. So let's switch over to idle and let's look at a program that uses the select statement. Okay, well here's a program that I've written called display contacts. It starts out with an import statement for the SQLite 3 module. Then here we have the definition of our main function, and then here we have some code that executes the main function. In the main function, first, we connect to the contacts.db database. This is the same database that we've been working with in the previous videos. Then this statement gives us a cursor object for that database. Next, in this statement, we're calling the cursor object's execute method to execute a select statement. The select statement is select name from contacts. So this is going to give us the value of the name column for every row in the contacts table. Now, something we haven't talked about yet is how do we actually get those results? Well, in Python, the select statement will create a list of tuples. Okay, so in the list of tuples, each tuple is one row from the database. So if the, from the table. So in this example, if the contacts table has 4 rows, then this statement is going to give us a list of tuples, and there will be 4 tuples. Also, if the contacts table, let's say the contacts table has 100 rows. Well, if we execute this select statement, it's going to give us a list of 100 tuples. So each tuple in the list is one row from the table. So to get that list of tuples, we have another cursor object method called fetchAll. We simply call that method and it returns the list of tuples. And in this program, we're going to assign it to a variable called results. And then just to make things simple, in this program, we're not going to worry about how we're going to format that data. We just want to display it on the screen so we can see how all this works with the database. So we're going to simply send the results object to the print function, and it's going to print that list of tuples on the screen. Then we close our database connection and we're done. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute this program. Okay, so here we can see the output of the program. This is our list of tuples. We know it's a list because it's enclosed in square brackets, and then each element of the list we know is a tuple because it's enclosed in parentheses. So here's the first row. The name column is Katie Allen. Here's the second row, Jill Ammons. Here's the third row, Kevin Brown. And here's the fourth row, Elisa Garcia. So 4 rows in the table, 4 tuples in our list. Now, let's modify this program so that we can further explore the way that this results object, the way that the select statement gives it back to us. This statement gives us the name column, but let's say that we also want to see the email column. I'm going to run the program again. And here in the output, we still get a list of 4 tuples, but this time each tuple has 2 columns of information. Here's the first row, Katie Allen and Katie's email address. Here is the second row, Jill Ammons and her email address. The third row, Kevin Brown and his email address. And then the last row, Elisa Garcia and her email address. We'll do one more version of this program. I'm going to use the wildcard character. This is going to give us all of the columns from the table. We'll run it. And here's the output. This time, each of the tuples has all 3 columns. It's got the contact ID, the name, and the email columns. So that's the simple way of looking at the results of a select statement. In an actual program, of course, here, instead of just printing the list of tuples on the screen, you would probably want to format it in some sort of way. For example, we could have a loop that iterates over the list of tuples, and then for each tuple, we could pull the columns, which are the elements of the tuple. We could pull those columns out and display them individually on the screen. Let's look at an example of how we might do that. Here, I'm going to start a for loop for row in results. So remember, my results object is a list of tuples, and as this loop iterates, each time it iterates, the row variable will reference one of the tuples in the list. So the row variable will hold the contents of a row. Now, in the print statement, what we want to do is we want to print the value of each element in our tuple. So I'm going to use an F string here, and we're simply going to print row sub 0. Okay, so that's the contact ID column, and we're going to print that in a field that is 5 spaces wide. Okay, and then we're going to print the contents of row sub 1. That's the name column. Let's print that in a field that's 15 spaces wide. And then the only column that's left is the email column, and that is in row sub 2. And let's print that in a field that is 20 spaces wide. So this should give us something that's easier to read and understand the information that's being displayed. So I will run this module, and here we have the results. And of course, looking back on this, I might want to do something about the fact that my contact ID column is justified right up against my name column, and that's an easy fix to do. I'm not going to do it in the video. I'll let you do that on your own. Well, let's look at one more feature of the select statement, and that is the use of the where clause to specify a search criteria. Now, in the previous examples of the select statement, we were looking at every row in the table. The select statement will give us specified columns from every row in a table, but sometimes you don't want every row in a table. Sometimes you only want specific rows. You want to search for the rows that meet a particular criterion. And the way that you do that in SQL is with the where clause. Here we have the general format of a select statement that uses a where clause. It simply says select columns from table where criteria. So the where criteria is going to be sort of a filter that causes the select statement to only give you the rows that meet this criteria. And a criteria is typically a Boolean expression. For example, let's say that we want the row in which contact ID is equal to 4. Okay, so here's the select statement. Select name from contacts where contact ID equal 4. So this statement is going to get the row that has 4 stored in the contact ID column, and it's going to give us the name column from that row. So in other words, it's going to give us the name of the person whose contact ID is equal to 4. Here's another example. Select star from contacts where contact ID equals 2. So this is going to give us all of the columns for the person who has the contact ID of 2. Okay, well let's switch over to idle, and let's see how we can use this in some code. Okay, so here's the program just the way that we left it. It's currently displaying all of the columns from all of the rows in the contacts table. I'm going to modify the select statement so that it only gives us the row where the contact ID is equal to 4. Where contact ID is equal to 4. We'll run that. And as you can see, here's the information that we've requested. Contact ID is 4. Elisa Garcia is the name, and then there's Elisa's email address. Let's look at another example. Suppose we want to see all of the information for Jill Ammons. So we can change our criterion to name equal Jill Ammons. We can run that. And it gives us the row that contains Jill Ammons information. So this gives you an overview of how to use the where clause Now, if you continue reading this chapter in your textbook, you'll see that there are lots of different ways that you can put together a search criteria. There's a whole set of relational operators that you can use, and also there are ways that you can search for strings that contain certain substrings within them. It's a very powerful feature of the select statement.